perspectives. And with that, I look forward to the discussion today and yield back and recognize Ranking Member Huffman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I hope you'll indulge me in thanking Anik for her contributions to this committee and wishing her very well. You've always been so professional and courteous and delightful. Just one of the real pros around here, and we appreciate you and wish you the best.
Can we all?
Yeah. And Mr. Chairman, also before I begin, I have unanimous consent request. I would like to enter into the record an article from the New York Times, July 21st, entitled "Climate Change is Making Fire Weather Worse for World's Forests." This article discusses 2 new scientific studies examining the impact of climate change on forest fires, a timely subject. Dr. Callum Cunningham says the article, quote, he says it really puts to bed any debate about the role of climate change in driving these extreme fires. Another climate scientist is quoted as saying climate change is loading the dice for extreme fire seasons like we are seeing. We cannot ignore the reckless and destructive policy course that has been set by this administration and this majority, so I will be sounding the alarm in every way I can before every hearing for the rest of this Congress on the climate crisis and the current path we're on.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So ordered.
Today we do have a broad range of bills on the agenda, and I am grateful that many of them reflect good faith bipartisan work. I appreciate all of our colleagues' collaboration on these efforts, but unfortunately the markup also includes some deeply flawed bills that reflect a dangerous departure from science-based, thoughtful policy making. Let's start with H.R. 178, a bill that would impose a rigid suppression mandate on the Forest Service, blocking trained professionals from using managed fire to reduce hazardous fuels before they become the kindling for the next mega fire. Now, according to the Forest Service, this bill would eliminate critically important firefighting tools. Grassroots wildland firefighters have called this bill a hindrance. Why? Because it effectively revives an old, failed Forest Service policy known as the 10 a.m. policy, an outdated approach that requires fire managers to suppress virtually every fire immediately, whether it makes sense or not. This approach helped create today's wildfire crisis by allowing dangerous fuels buildup. It also consumed resources and put firefighters' lives at risk in some circumstances where it wasn't even necessary. Now, I understand why this bill, at first blush, would sound reasonable. It is tempting to see what's happened recently with the fire in the Grand Canyon and conclude that we should just go and suppress every fire immediately, no matter what. To be clear, in this case, in the Grand Canyon, something went wrong. Immediate suppression would have prevented the North Rim from burning, and it is the right strategy in many cases, but something terribly went wrong in the Grand Canyon, and we need a thorough investigation and a clear public accounting of the Trump administration's failure to get it right, because we know that there were dry, volatile conditions on the ground. But we need transparency and accountability. These are foreign words to this administration. This Congress should insist on it. That's the right response. The response to a failure of judgment is not to outlaw judgment. Mandating a one-size-fits-all strategy for fire managers will allow unmanaged fuels to accumulate, dramatically increase wildfire risk, and that's an overcorrection. Next, we have H.R. 179 on the agenda. This bill is premised on a familiar but false narrative that NEPA is to blame for pretty much everything. The bill mandates a broad, sweeping categorical exclusion for projects up to 10,000 acres. That's about 15 square miles, regardless of site-specific risks or the public interest. Categorical exclusions are intended for projects that aren't likely to pose a significant threat to the environment or public health. The Forest Service already uses them for roughly 85% of its forest management projects. One idea should just be common sense, and that is that the depth of environmental review under NEPA should match the level of risk that a project poses to people and the environment. Basic due diligence, and that's how we prevent costly, avoidable mistakes. H.R. 179 ignores that principle entirely. As we heard during yesterday's hearing, When there are NEPA-related delays, they're usually caused by staffing shortages, underfunded permitting agency officials, and in many cases, project sponsors submitting incomplete or poorly scoped proposals. Blaming the statute is like blaming a building code for delays because your contractor didn't show or your blueprints were half finished. And then finally, we have H.R. 839, which targets the Muleshoe National Wildlife Refuge in Texas. This is a bill that would block the Fish and Wildlife Service from implementing voluntary conservation efforts for Muleshoe. Like conservation easements, it would restrict private landowners' ability to work with the service to protect their lands, even when they choose to do it. Now, this is a clear example of federal overreach and needless meddling with private property rights. During the hearing on this bill, a landowner named John Rowley, and I should clarify that this is a respected Texas rancher and a big Trump supporter, testified against the bill, calling it, quote, an infringement on my rights as a property owner, end quote, and he is right. My colleagues talk a lot about property rights, but this bill's a clear infringement. It would also undermine voluntary market-driven conservation efforts to protect some of the last remaining native grasslands on the southern high plains. This is one of the most imperiled ecosystems on Earth. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to the discussion. Some of these bills are counterproductive in addressing wildfires and protecting important places. I'm glad that we will be moving some other bills that reflect bipartisan, solution-oriented work. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Pursuant to the markup notice, it is now in order to consider H.R. 839 to prohibit the implementation of a land protection plan for Muleshoe National Wildlife Refuge. Ask unanimous consent that the Subcommittee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries be discharged from further consideration of the bill. Without objection, so ordered. Without objection, the bill is considered or will be considered as read and open to amendment at any point. Does any member wish to be recognized for purpose of debate on the bill? Mr. Huffman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are here to consider a bill that does something I never thought I'd see from my Republican colleagues, restricts private property rights in the name of opposing conservation. This bill would prohibit the implementation of the Muleshoe National Wildlife Refuge Land Protection Plan, blocking a science-based, transparent conservation effort that operates entirely through voluntary participation with willing sellers. Let me be crystal clear about what this bill that we're debating really does. It tells private landowners that they cannot sell or donate their property to the Fish and Wildlife Service or even work with the Fish and Wildlife Service through voluntary easements, even if that's exactly what they want to do with their property. Don't take my word for it. Again, as I just mentioned, take the word of rock-ribbed Republican John Rowley, who testified before this committee during our April 8th hearing. Mr. Rowley owns 3,800 acres in Texas within the boundaries of the Land Protection Plan, and he spent decades as a thoughtful steward of his land, even earning recognition this year as a Lone Star Land Steward. Here's what Mr. Rowley told us, quote, Congress should not be in the business of telling landowners to whom they can or cannot sell or donate their land. If I want to donate or sell my land to an oil company, a developer, or to the Fish and Wildlife Service, that is my right to do so. This bill would unfairly restrict that right. Now, Mr. Rowley called this bill an infringement on my rights as a property owner. And again, this is a pretty serious rock-ribbed Republican Trump supporter. For years, we have heard endless talk from the other side about property rights. But when presented with a plan that actually expands landowner options, gives them additional market opportunities while respecting those who choose not to participate, our colleagues want to shut all of that down. The Land Protection Plan doesn't force anyone to do anything. It creates a voluntary framework where landowners can choose to sell or grant conservation easements or not, all with the goal of conserving these incredible grasslands. It's a market-driven process that respects property rights while advancing conservation goals. And let's talk about what we're trying to conserve. The United States has lost 80% of its original grasslands. The southern high plains have lost half of their native grasslands to development. We're talking about one of the most threatened ecosystems on the planet, habitat for sandhill cranes, pronghorn, lesser prairie chickens, and declining grassland bird species. This isn't just about conservation, it's about economics too. The refuge manager noted during public sessions that his plan will attract tourism, boost local economies, and increase county revenues. Global grassland services are valued at more than $20 trillion annually. So my colleagues claim that this is about fighting federal overreach. I don't see the overreach. Mr. Rowley exposed this talking point for what it is, a hollow political piece of rhetoric. The real federal overreach is Congress telling property owners they can't sell their land to the Fish and Wildlife Service even when they want to. This bill represents everything wrong with their approach to conservation policy: politics over science, ideology over economics, and most ironically, government interference over property rights. I oppose this misguided bill and urge my colleagues to oppose it as well. Yield back.